If you're online with me, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to get started in just a minute. I've got to do just a couple of more things before we get going. Be right back. Hi, Dina. How are you? Okay, we're going to get started in just about a minute. So if you're online with me already, welcome. If you could go ahead and type your name into the chat box and let me know that you're here. Dina, I'm so excited you're here too, because I know that isn't always possible. And if anybody else is online with us, go ahead and let me know. Just be sure you have selected to all panelists and attendees. Hi, Andy. Glad to have you here. Looks like we've got several other people on with us. I hope they'll figure out how to open the chat box and say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Hey, Vanjie. Hi. I am really looking forward to tonight. I haven't done this class in a long, long time, and it's one of my favorites. Hi, Margaret. Glad to have you with us. Happy to have you here. And what I'm going to ask you to do, because I'm going to be working off of a PowerPoint screen, you can go ahead and type in your questions if you have questions during the course of the presentation. But I won't be answering any questions until we get to the end. I will check from time to time to make sure that everybody can hear and see what I'm saying and see the screen, know that I've got my screen shared properly and you can hear me okay. Can everybody that's on here hear me okay right now? Okay, Dina, thank you. Very good, she says. I'm going to put on some oils. I love to start with oils. So if you've got oils handy, one of my favorites always before a presentation is to put a little Valor on my wrists and hold on the inside of my wrists and then hold my wrists together. And relax and breathe. And if you do that, it will balance all your body systems and your energy field. And sometimes I actually feel a wave go through my body of relaxation. That is really nice when that happens. So, and it happens often, so it's not like it doesn't happen except once in a while. Valor. Okay, I'm just going to inhale some of this right from the bottle. And then I'm going to put on a little bit of clarity, get my brain working hopefully at optimum levels. Because like I said, I haven't done this presentation for a while. And you know, if you don't use things, you kind of tend to lose parts of them. So, hopefully that won't happen tonight. I think I've got enough on the slides to help me. Oh, inhale clarity 5 times. Vanjie taught me to do that 5 times. And it really does make a difference, I've found. Oh, I love clarity. Used to when I was working all day, when I first started with oils. In the afternoons after lunch, I would have these lose all my energy going to try to take care of the food that I had consumed at lunch. And I would go back to the office and I couldn't focus on anything. So I would pull out my brain power and I'd put some on my thumb and stick it in my mouth and suck my thumb. And then I would put some in my hands and stir it and then inhale it 3 or 4 times. And then I would put clarity on the back of my neck and inhale that 3 or 4 times. And then I would put peppermint on and I would be wide awake and able to focus. And it was really nice. And so if you're still working, maybe that will help you. Brain power, clarity, and peppermint. And I would put the peppermint in my mouth after I'd had brain power, because brain power has a lot of frankincense in it. So if you don't have brain power and you do have frankincense, you could just use the frankincense to help your brain function. And really powerful way if you get that afternoon drop in focus and concentration. Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and get started. This evening we're going to be talking about, let's see, I have to share my screen first. I'm sorry. And ta-da! Okay, now I'm going to open my chat box for just a minute and make sure everybody can see my screen. Come on, chat box, open up. Here we go. Okay, can somebody let me know, can you see my screen? It says Ancient and Modern Roots of Aromatherapy. Okay, great. All right, I'm getting several people saying yes, wonderful. Okay, yes, beautiful pink roses. Hope you had a wonderful Valentine's Day, everybody. I did. It was wonderful here at home and had a very, very nice day. And I hope all of you did too. I tried to avoid television and again today. And my heart goes out to everybody in Florida. And I am praying for them. I just don't want to hear about it 24/7 because it's very depressing to me to see those kinds of things. Okay, enough about that. Back to what we're here for, ancient and modern roots of aromatherapy. Okay, let's see. So what is an essential oil? And essential oils are highly concentrated aromatic extracts. They're distilled or cold pressed from a variety of plant materials, including grasses, leaves, flowers, seeds, needles, twigs, the peel of the fruit, like with lemon and orange, grapefruit, wood, and roots. So they come from pretty much every kind of material if they have aromatics associated with them. And there are a huge number of plants that have no aromatics associated with them. So not every plant has essential oils, which is really interesting. The International Organization for Standardization, or ISO, which is a very important organization for companies that are doing business around the world, defines an essential oil as a product made by distillation with either water or steam, or by mechanical processing of citrus rinds, or by dry distillation of natural materials. Following the distillation, the essential oil is physically separated from the water phase, if there is one. And there are 3 primary pathways for oils to enter the body: inhalation through the nose, topical application using the skin, and ingestion. Either there are lots of different ways to ingest an oil. You can lick it, you can put it in a capsule, you can put a drop under your tongue, you can well, that's all I can think of right now. Oh, there are other ways of getting oils inside the body, but I don't really think of them as ingestion. Anyway, look at your essential oil desk reference for some really interesting applications of essential oils using syringes and bulbous syringes for inserting into various areas of the body. Now, um, the limbic system is a very interesting part of our physical makeup. The limbic system actually is um, connected to the amygdala. And the amygdala is a tiny little organ right here in the central part of the brain. And David Stewart used to talk about this as being the librarian for every emotional experience you've ever had. So you have an experience and it comes in, and then the amygdala is given the task of categorizing and storing that information. There's a very interesting scientific fact that the amygdala, the only thing they have found that stimulates the amygdala is the sense of smell. So essential oils have a very powerful way of affecting our body, our mind, body, and emotional connections through the limbic system. And when you inhale an oil, it goes in the nose and directly to the brain. And it's one of the only things that does that without going someplace else. So when you inhale an oil, it goes directly into the brain. And that is very powerful. It's also a good reason to make sure you have extremely good oils that you can trust, because you don't want to be putting toxic chemicals or synthetic chemicals or something that you're unsure about in your brain. Now, the safety tips, and these are really important safety tips. Use only grade A organic essential oils. And I would say use only Young Living oils because they're the only ones I've found that I trust enough to do that. There are other good oils out there. There are just not very many companies you can trust to keep oils safe for you. Never put oils directly into your eyes. You can put oils around the orbit of the eye, and there are some oils that you could put on the upper part of the eyelid, but I wouldn't even put them down on the lower part of the eyelid for the most part, unless you've got them diluted. Never pour an oil into your ears. This is really important. You can put oil on your finger and go around the inside of the ear, but you don't want to pour oils directly into your ear because we don't know how that might affect the eardrum. And that's a very important part of our body. So we don't want to do anything that might in any way do something to damage that eardrum. Now, the benefits to the body of essential oils include physical well-being, structural support, emotional balance, spiritual upliftment, increased beauty or youthful appearance of skin, immune support, improved personal hygiene, hormonal balancing, cleansing, and purifying. So they have many, many, many benefits for us. But how did this all get started? Well, historical evidence suggests that aromatic plants, herbs, oils, and ointments have long been used for perfumes and medicines. And I'm not going to go through everything I know about this. I'm going to try to give something fairly quick so we can get through the information in an hour, hopefully. I'm going to do my best anyway. But starting back in 3000 BC, we have Egyptians at that time are learning to write and make bricks. And they have records indicating that they imported large quantities of myrrh. The Egyptian god Nefertum is depicted in hieroglyphs as healing through the power of plants and flowers. And the wealthy, this over here, these are a group of wealthy ladies, and they have cones of myrrh. If you look on top of their heads, you see these things. They have cones of myrrh and other fragrant spices and oils that they use to scent and protect their bodies. And in the heat in Egypt, those cones would slowly melt and drip down over their body, protecting their skin. It would also keep flies out of their eyes and a number of other things. So Oils were very highly prized in the ancient world. Now, there have been a lot of people who have said that there was no essential oils uh, during this time in our history. However, there is the Indus Valley terracotta apparatus that has been dated scientifically to between 3000 and 4000 BC. So that would be 5 to 6,000 years ago. And if you look at it, this is a picture of it that Gary Young drew when he went to the museum where it was kept in Pakistan. I don't know whether it's been destroyed because of all the things that are going on in that area or not, but if it isn't, then you could go there and see it if it's still there. And these egg-shaped things with this kind of swan neck, and this is a fire down here and a water bath. This is believed to be the first known primitive still that may have been used for distilling essential oils from plants. And it was discovered by an archaeological expedition led by Dr. Paolo Ravesti in 1975. So that was only discovered in 1975. That's not that long ago for me. And then here is a modern still that's available for purchase today in France. And if you look at the design, there's a lot of similarity here. You've got a fire under one part, and this is lavender and water. And it rises, it creates a steam that rises up and then condenses in this coil and then is reduced out here where it's collected, and then you skim the essential oil off the water. And so it's a very, like this would be the condenser here, which you see here with these coils. There may not have been coils in that, I don't know. But they're very similar in appearance, which is very interesting. And also between 2 and 3000 BC, just to give you a little bit of understanding of what was going on around the world, there were 3 Babylonian tablets dated to this period that contain orders for cedar, myrrh, and cypress. And one had a recipe for scented ointments, and another had a list of medicinal uses for cypress. At about the same time, there was the rise of Ayurvedic medicine in India, and it has a vast pharmacopoeia of herbal spice-based remedies. That was handed down through oral traditions until about 900 BC, when 3 great scholars wrote down the principles of this ancient wisdom. And so now we have Ayurvedic medicine. They have a lot of same plant and herb and spice-based remedies that they use. In 2697 BC, the Chinese Yellow Emperor wrote the Book of Internal Medicine, and in it he explained all the various uses for aromatic herbs. So it wasn't just in one area. It wasn't just in Egypt. It was in India. It was in China. But we think mostly about oils in Egypt because of the history of our own people and our Bible. So between 1323 and 1333 BC, King Tut ruled Egypt. When his tomb was discovered in November 1922, that was 3,000 years later, they found, and here's a picture of one, they found alabaster calcite jars sealed in goose fat, and these jars contained resinous materials, including spices and frankincense. Isn't that interesting? They actually, and the other thing is that they tested the frankincense after they took off the goose grease. They tested the frankincense, and after 3,000 years, it was still viable. It was still usable, and it was in the form of an oil. And here are pictures of frankincense balls that were found in King Tut's tomb. And this is one of the many unguent vases that were found in King Tut's tomb in 1922. Look at how beautiful and delicate that is. I can just imagine an essential oil of myrrh or frankincense or cypress being stored in this. And then they would have a cap of goose grease up here to keep it protected. From 1200 to 2000 BC, Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets, there's a typo, described elaborate egg-shaped vessels containing coils. That's interesting. And their function is not known. They really don't know what they are. The vessels closely resemble Arabian etrice, which were used for distillation of essential oils much later in history in the same geographic region. A plague was stopped by Aaron when he took a censer and went among the people burning incense and making an atonement. There were over 14,700 who died, and Aaron stood between the dead and the living with these censers burning plant materials, and the plague was stayed, and that's in Numbers 16. You can find that. And in the book of Exodus, we're provided a recipe for a holy anointing oil that was given to Moses for cleansing the temple and initiation of the priests. And that's in Exodus 30. And so this is the main reason we think of Egypt when we think of essential oils, because in the Bible, there's all this mention of different plant materials and anointing with oil. And for most of us, that's the only place we'd ever heard of anything like that growing up here in the West. In between 100 AD, so the Common Era, and 50 BC, by the first century AD, Rome was going through about 2,800 tons of imported frankincense and 550 tons of myrrh per year. And Rome used frankincense, of course, in all of their cathedrals, all of their religious ceremonies. It was really very much a part of the everyday life for Romans at the time of Christ. The Roman historian Pliny authored a natural history that, among others, mentions 32 remedies prepared from rose oil. And the Romans also used a blend of oils to instill courage before they went into battle. And then during the time of Christ, of course, this is a story that almost all of us know. The three kings brought the baby Jesus frankincense and myrrh. And in James 5:14, it says, "Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord." And this is a very powerful statement that most of my life, until I came into Young Living, I had no real understanding of what this meant. I understood, if any is sick among you, let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him. That part I understood. But anointing with oil in the name of the Lord was not something they did in the Baptist church or the Church of Christ or the Methodist church. Those were the churches that I had belonged to. And so this was new to me. The Greek word Christos actually means anointed. Now, that's anointed of God, but it's anointing. And this is the same root word and the same indication that what we are doing is a sacred, holy act when we apply oils to another person. And near the end of his ministry, Christ is anointed with spikenard once on his head, and later Mary Magdalene anoints his feet with the costly ointment. And ointments were made generally by using plant material suffused with an olive oil base of some kind. But there were all types of ointments. We don't have those recipes because the Bible was not written to give us a book on how to use essential oils. It was written to give us a way of connecting with God, a way of connecting with Jesus. And so its purpose was very different. But you don't, when you read David Stewart's Healing Laws of the Bible, it becomes obvious that there was a lot of information there that most of us just kind of glossed over and didn't really understand. I know that was the case for me. Um, Between 800 and 1037 AD, this is really interesting to me. Jabir ibn Hayyan of Arabia wrote several chapters on essential oil distillation. So this is in the 800s in his book Summa Perfectionis. And from 980 to 1037, Avicenna, which actually is an Arabic name, Ibn Sina, which means son of Sina, wrote the Canon of Medicine. And this was 100 books on the use of essential oils in medicine. And these books were actually continued to be used and translated and even taught in universities in Europe and the Middle East all the way up until the 15th and 16th century. So we're given this in our history classes. But if you see, most people think Avicenna was the inventor of distillation, and you'll see that in a lot of information that's out there, but he wasn't the inventor. He was a student of Jabir ibn Hayyan, and Avicenna became much more famous than his teacher because he had written so many more books, and they were used for centuries in the training of people who were studied in the use of plants and essential oils. Okay, so how did we get to that, to what we have today? And why did it all disappear? Why did all that information that was so closely kept for so many years disappear? Well, of course, when pilgrims and the people who were fleeing Europe, coming to America, when we came here, there was this desire to forget about everything from the past, change everything that we had been through, set up something new. And of course, that's what they did here in America. They totally changed the future for the planet by changing the style of government and everything else, which we have here. And our country was rich with freedom and ideas, and it was a very interesting time to be alive. Let's just put it that way. And there was a lot of information that wasn't brought over because it was difficult to get the materials here, and there hadn't been enough study of what was available here in this country that wouldn't have to be shipped long distances. And there weren't a lot of extraordinarily wealthy people in this country. There were some wealthy people, but they were mostly people who were still attached to England or Spain or France. And so they had family ties and doctors that they would continue going to there. And but out of this, that was part of why things changed here in the West, why we didn't get this kind of information. Secondarily, when they first discovered penicillin, most old remedies were now considered pseudoscience, and it was something from the past. It had nothing to do with what was coming out of this rich and growing science. It was tied up with, I hesitate to say this, but it is true. Herbalists and people who focused on general home remedies. There were a lot of people in the backwoods that did this, a lot of people that grew a lot of their own plants that still carried forth some of this knowledge, but it became lost after more and more generations. I know my mother-in-law, my mother, my grandmother, they all knew how to go into the woods and down by the creek and find every kind of plant and herb that you can imagine and knew what to do with them to create a poultice or help you get over whatever you were dealing with. But the rise of science kind of pushed all of these things to the background. And when frankincense, when they were able to, because frankincense was very costly, as we know, when plant materials can be affected by weather and all of these other things, then we're without them for some time, because we are unfortunately, we have the problem that crops can be destroyed through natural disaster, hurricanes, fires. We have no myrtle right now because of the fires that happened this last year. And if there's war in an area, if you're getting a crop from a specific area because it has certain properties, then you can't get that. Synthetics made this reliance on these things obsolete. And man thought, okay, this is a way we can create something with a lot more control, a lot less cost, and we can duplicate it exactly the same way every time. So that was how we got modern medicine and pharmaceuticals and all of those things. When scents could be synthetically reproduced, frankincense was one of the first oils that was synthetically produced, because they could use it in the Catholic Church and they no longer had to rely on exports from the Middle East, which made them very happy. So that sort of led to oils kind of moving further and further to the background. But how did we get to the three modern schools? And there are primarily three modern schools of aromatherapy. One is German, one is French, and one is English. Now, the vast majority of research on essential oils during the last centuries prior to the 1970s here in America, prior to the 1920s in Europe, was done in the Middle East, in Turkey, in Egypt, in Arabia, and Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And there was also about 200 years worth of research in Germany. So the German school was actually the first school of aromatherapy in Western science. Hieronymus Braunschweig was a German surgeon, alchemist, and botanist, and he was noted for his methods of treating gunshot wounds. He also published a number of different books. His most influential book, published in 1519, was Liber de Arte Distillandi de Simplicibus, which is Latin for the Book of the Art of Distillation. There were a great number of scientific studies into essential oils conducted in Germany during the 18th century and onward. However, it was Germany. Germany was not very well liked by a lot of countries. And so most of those things were not translated into English. And that's another reason why we didn't have this information. There was also a German, Linda Smith writes about her. There was a German Catholic nun who did wonderful work with plants and herbs. And she was almost burned at the stake as a witch. But she wasn't a witch. She was just somebody working with plants and herbs. Now, today in Germany and Switzerland, between 600 and 700 plant-based medicines are available. And they're prescribed by approximately 70% of the physicians there. Kurt Schnabelt is a PhD, a Swiss chemist. And if you haven't found his books, he has many excellent books on aromatherapy that are in print in English, and he actually lives here in the United States now. He founded the Pacific Institute of Aromatherapy on the west coast of the U.S., and these are two of his books, Advanced Aromatherapy, The Science of Essential Oil Therapy, and Medical Aromatherapy, Healing with Essential Oils. And his name is Kurt Schnabelt, Schnaubelt. He has a lot more books than these. I happen to have these two, and they're really good. They're a little dry. They're very scientific, but extremely good, worth having. Now, the German school strongly encourages that you only inhale essential oils because it's the safest way to enjoy oils. Excuse me. The French school came about between 1910 and 1937. And this is really where we got the term aromatherapy came from a French chemist. His name was René Maurice Gattefossé. He was born in 1881. He died in 1950. And Gattefossé coined the term aromatherapy in 1928. Now, he worked in his family's lavender farm and distillery and perfumery, and there was an explosion that created a horrendous fire. And in his book, which I have because it was translated into English, he talks about this in great detail. And he said that what happened was the fire was enormous and it was a tremendous explosion, and his burns were gangrenous, was the way he described it. And he stuck his arm in a vat of what he thought was water. And after his arm had been in there for about 30 seconds, he noticed that all of his pain stopped. And the swelling had started to reduce slightly. And it turned out that it wasn't water at all. It was a vat of lavender oil, pure lavandula angustifolia. And so in 1937, Gattefossé published Aromatherapy and Antiseptiques Essentiales, which is just antiseptic essentials. And he documented a lot of the research that he did beginning in the 1920s. Jean Valnet was a medical doctor and an army surgeon, and he used essential oils as antiseptic. He was also French. Used essential oils as antiseptics because they ran out of antibiotics and a number of other medications. And he knew Gattefossé, and he had read some of his work and some of the published papers that he had had. And so he started using essential oils to treat war wounds. And in 1959, Dr. Valnet left the army and set up his surgery in Paris. But while he was there, he did a tremendous amount of research and refined what he called his theory of medicine, founded on therapeutic natural synergies that he said were bereft of harmful secondary effects. Now, I have Valnet's book, The Practice of Aromatherapy, which you see there. Over the next 50 years, Valnet expounded his theories in various publications, books, and medical journals. And his book, The Practice of Aromatherapy, was published sometime earlier, but it was translated into English and published here in the United States in 1977. There were two books published here in the United States in 1977. And I'll mention the other one in a few minutes, but they were the first two books ever on essential oils in the United States. So that's why we think of this as new, if that helps some of you. So to go back to the 1940s and 50s, so Gattefossé and Valnet. Valnet was he became a student, almost an apprentice to Gattefossé in Paris, and they worked together for many years. And they produced a lot of very good science on the use of essential oils, and started, actually you can, in France, essential oils, the only way you can get them is to get them from the pharmacy after they've been prescribed by a doctor, by a medical doctor. So in France, the essential oil industry is controlled pretty much by the MDs. In 1949 and 1950, Schroeder and Messing, these were in Germany, developed a technique that later became the aromatogram. And this is a picture of an aromatogram over here. I'm going to go into that just a little bit more. 1954 to 1956, Kellner and Colbert, also German, published a study on the action of 175 essential oils against 8 airborne bacteria and fungi. And 1950 to 1959, Madame Marguerite Maury, an Austrian-born biochemist, developed a unique method of applying essential oils with massage. And later, Madame Mallory taught her techniques to an English massage therapist, Robert Tisserand. Madame Mallory was married to an English surgeon, and we'll talk a little bit more about her. Dr. Paul Bellaiche at the University of Paris uses the aromatogram to provide a graphic depiction of the effectiveness of essential oils. Now, I posted some things that Dr. Cole Woolley had shared this week. And here you have a Petri dish. It has a filter paper in the middle that they have put essential oil onto that filter paper. And then in the culture medium, they have swabbed it with bacteria. So here they've used ginger, and you see that the bacteria pretty much spread without inhibition, although it didn't overtake the filter, the paper filter that was there. Geranium, you see that the bacteria, there was some bacteria that it did not spread into part of the paper here, and it actually was also being effective beyond just the little filter paper. And then oregano, and you can see the bacteria was very much pushed to the edges of the Petri dish. So even though the same strain of bacteria was in every one of these, you can see the different action that takes place with different oils. Now, medical phytoaromatherapy, this is Jean-Claude Lapras, he's an MD, and Christian Durford, and they founded the Phytoaromatherapy Institute in 1992. Their commitment to the dissemination of medical phytoaromatherapy and their association with universities and learned societies around the world have helped establish clinical training in aromatherapy in France, Belgium, Spain, Greece, Italy, Mexico, Switzerland, Madagascar, Tunisia, the Ivory Coast, and even in the United States. And these two people, their names are kind of important. Jean-Claude Lapras, he actually taught classes here in the United States. I don't know whether he still is, but he was up until about 10 years ago, and he actually taught at one of the Young Living conventions. He taught under the auspices of other, under the National Association of Holistic Aromatherapists and other agencies in the United States at different places around the country. It's a very thick French accent, and you have to really tune your ear in to be able to understand him. I haven't found anything posted online that you could watch of his, but if you can find him doing a presentation, it would be worth being there to learn from him. Dr. Daniel Penuel is an MD, and he also helped establish the French model of medical aromatherapy. He spoke for a week at the Young Living Convention the year before I joined Young Living. I hate that I missed that. I did get to meet him once, and I did hear him speak, but not for a week. I would have loved that. French perfumers, chemists, and medical doctors have created the largest body of scientific research. Dr. Penuel and Pierre Fancombe, who is a PhD chemist, co-authored the medical textbook on the chemistry and clinical application of essential oils called L'Aromatherapie Exactement. And that is kind of the Bible in the medical field in France. And Penuel is a very interesting man. The last I knew, he was living in Australia. I have several books by him, and he's a very interesting person. He says to use essential oils as if they were warriors and you were taking them to battle. You do them everywhere you can, every way you can. And he along with Jean-Claude Lapras, they were all students of Valnay and Gattefossé. Penuel and Lapras are industry leaders in France, Switzerland, Australia, the US, and elsewhere. So these are very knowledgeable, skilled, brilliant men who have done a lot for medical aromatherapy around the world. So the French school, founded and promoted primarily by MD surgeons, chemists, and phytotherapists, They promote using oils in every way possible, but they also promote that they only be used by people who are highly skilled and highly trained. And however, they did teach Gary Young, and they did come and teach a lot of us who were in Young Living at Gary's request. So that's very interesting to know, especially if you're fairly new in Young Living. They know that different benefits are available from each type of application. So this is a good way of thinking about it. Yes, just inhaling oils is fabulous. Just applying oils topically is fabulous. Just ingesting oils is fabulous. But when you use them every way you can, you get a lot more benefit, and the body gets a lot more support. In the 1960s and 70s, Jean Valnet published The Practice of Aromatherapy in 1964, and of course I told you already it was published in English in 1977. In 1961, Madame Maury, the biochemist I mentioned earlier, published The Secret of Life and Youth. Isn't that a wonderful title? And she opened clinics in France, England, and Switzerland. In 1973, Wagner and Sprinkemeyer demonstrated an essential oil blend to have broader activity than broad-spectrum antibiotics. And, pardon me, in 1977, Robert Tisserand published his book, The Art of Aromatherapy. This is the other book that was published at the same time. So The Art of Aromatherapy and The Practice of Aromatherapy came out in the United States in 1977, both of them at the same time. It was the first time anyone here in the United States had ever heard of essential oils unless they were somehow on the inside through connections with Europeans. In 1978 to 79, Dr. Paul Bellish published Traité de phytothérapie et d'aromathérapie and perfected the aromatogram. So if anybody asks you if there is science behind aromatherapy, there is a lot of science behind aromatherapy. Now, the British School. This is very important for you to know. So I told you Robert Tisserand had one of the first two books published in English in the United States. And Tisserand was a student of Madame Maury. And she founded these clinics in England. Robert Tisserand was one of her students. He was a massage therapist that she trained in the use of essential oils. And they developed the British School of Aromatherapy. And this is where we get the group of people who are absolutely terrified that essential oils are going to kill you and your pets and everybody else. The British School admonishes practitioners that all oils are dangerous, and they must be diluted with a minimum of a 92% carrier or massage oil, and preferably diluted 98% with a carrier or massage oil in order to avoid any potential for harm. And if you tell them that essential oils have any power to help the body, they will tell you you are crazy because they have never seen it. Well, if you're diluting them 92 to 98%, you're not going to see much happen. So, and unfortunately, the British School has kind of taken over the National Association of Holistic Aromatherapists, which is a real sad state of affairs. But that's the way it is. They're very vocal, and I was in NAHA for many years. I was a registered aromatherapist. I used to get hate mail from people in NAHA every single day because I was teaching what they said was dangerous and was going to kill people. I've been using oil since 1995. There was a lot of discussion about whether to go down this road in the United States, because we did have oils available to us here that were very pure, but there weren't very many companies doing that. And the aromatherapists who were so vocal about this said, people will take what you're saying and go to the grocery store and go to Walmart and go to the health food store and buy stuff that's full of synthetics that will kill them and or harm them. Well, we don't know of many people that's been killed by it, but we do know people that have been harmed by doing that because synthetics don't work in the body the way natural substances do. And let me check my time. Yeah, I'm going to have to go on with this because, but someday I have to tell you that why I know about the difference between synthetics and natural substances. That's a really interesting story. If we have time, I'll do it tonight. So Robert Tisserand began practicing as a massage therapist in 1969. He founded the Tisserand Company, which produces essential oils that are all highly diluted, in 1974. And in 1977, he published The Art of Aromatherapy. And he is an industry leader in England, Canada, the USA, and Australia. And he has lots of acolytes here in the United States. And they will all tell you that every oil has to be diluted 92 to 98%. And they have this whole list of oils that are dangerous. So just be aware of that. It's not always true. I had anticipated, and fortunately, Young Living has grown to the point where eventually I think this will be true, that the American model would be a totally holistic model, as foreseen by D. Gary Young. Now, Gary studied from 1982 to 1989, 7 years, with MDs, PhDs. He studied anatomy, chemistry, microbiology, hematology, oncology, and all manner of degenerative diseases. From 85 to 89, he studied with Jean-Claude Lapraz and Daniel Penwell. From 1990 to 94, he studied essential oil distillation with Marcel Espiau, who was the president of the Lavender Growers Association in southern France. And I met Marcel Espiau. He came to the Young Living Convention one year, and he went out to the farm, and he always called Gary his lavender cowboy. and they were up on this trailer out at the farm, and Gary had on his cowboy hat and his boots, and Marcel was there speaking in his very erudite French, and they had a translator. And Gary actually stuffed lavender seeds in his boots, if you haven't heard that story, to bring lavender from France, and started his own fields with those lavender seeds here in the United States. But Marcel, I heard him say this with my own ears. Marcel said, "This student has become the teacher." He said, "I am so impressed with the distilleries that Gary has created, the incredible, beautiful fields of lavender I find here in Utah." And for those of you who don't know, a few years back, all of the fields of lavender in Europe were destroyed by a fungi. And for several years, there was no lavender coming out of Europe. And Gary Young gave them plants from here in America and seeds from here in America to restart the lavender fields in France. So the European growers love Gary, because were it not for him, lavender, pure Lavandula angustifolia would have been lost to the world. In 1993, Gary Young and Mary founded Young Living Essential Oils, the company in Utah. And in 1994, he built the largest, most technologically advanced stainless steel distillery in North America. Now, I see these as the four schools of modern aromatherapy. The French medical aromatherapy with Gattefossé, Valnet, Lapraz, Belèche, Francombe, Penwell, and Duraford. The English, which is popular aromatherapy or massage-based aromatherapy, which was created by Madame Marie, Robert Tisserand, and people such as Ballax and Watt. Scylla Shepherd-Hanger is here in the United States, but she is definitely a follower of the British model. Robert Pappas, who is a chemist here in the United States, also a believer in the British model. Jane Buckle or Buckle is a PhD and nurse, and she has a couple of excellent books. She also believes in the British model. And NAHA has basically um, decided that the British model is the only way they're going to look at things. And you can diffuse stuff, but basically, if you're going to apply anything, you can't ingest anything. And if you're going to apply it, it has to be diluted 92 to 98% with a carrier oil. So in Germany, you have what's typically called esoteric aromatherapy. Um, you have Gunther, Deininger, Schroeder and Nessing, Wagner and Sprankmeyer, Schnaubalt from Switzerland. And they primarily promote inhalation, although they've done a lot of excellent research into the benefits of essential oils. And here in America, we have, and I think will become more and more this way the world over, we'll have holistic aromatherapy, which uses all of these pathways into the body to be able to benefit us. And Jeannie Rose is a woman who used to live in California. I'm not sure she's still alive, but she wrote one of the first books written here in the United States. And she did a lot to bring aromatherapy to this country. D. Gary Young, of course, Linda Smith, David Stewart, many others. You can find a lot of authors today. When we started with essential oils in 1995, there were all, well, in Young Living in 1999, there was almost nothing available. So we didn't have the essential oil disc reference and all of these other great books that we have today and resources. So there is a wealth of information available now. And this is also something you need to understand. There are 4 grades of essential oils. There's food grade, and that can be manipulated or standardized. It may not be adulterated, but it typically is manipulated. And it also, they aren't focused on any therapeutic benefit, so they typically use very high temperature and very high pressure, which destroys certain aspects of every essential oil. But they're not worried about that because they can manipulate the oil and still get the scent or the flavor that they want. Perfume grade, which you don't have a clue what's in a perfume grade oil. And in this country, to be considered a pure essential oil, you only have to have 5% of that oil in that bottle. So if you get a bottle at the health food store and it says Lavandula angustifolia, pure 100% therapeutic grade essential oil, there is no actual grade called therapeutic grade. They're just using that as marketing. Gary Young coined that phrase, therapeutic grade, to identify a difference between what Young Living was doing and making sure that the ground had lay fallow for so many years before they started growing the seed there, and making sure the seed had been produced from organically produced plants, and making sure the oils, the plants were taken care of and grown with organic practices, and then to have them distilled in a way that wouldn't destroy all those benefits. So it was as close to what was in that plant by God, put in that plant by God, as he could get it. And then there's aromatherapy grade. And aromatherapy grade essential oils, I would never use aromatherapy or perfume grade at all. But therapeutic grade basically is grade A. And if you have a grade A oil, it's the first distillation, not a combination of all the distillations. Aromatherapy grade is they'll distill the plant material 4 or 5 times and then combine all of it. So you get the best and the worst, and they just put it all back together. And they will also take Lavandula angustifolia, lavender oil. They'll take spike lavender or Lavandula ex hybrida, which they can grow much easier than Lavandula angustifolia, produces twice as much oil per pound of material, And they can distill that at high temperature and high pressure and put 5% pure lavandula angustifolia in that bottle and call it pure lavender oil and 100% lavender oil. Well, it is, but lavandula angustifolia will actually protect skin. It will actually do things that you would be amazed, and I've seen it done right in front of my eyes. And if you use X hybrida or spike lavender, then you've got camphor in there, which is not in lavandula angustifolia, which is really a very powerful oil for many things having to do with skin. But if you have camphor in an oil, which is in the X hybrida and the spike lavender, then you can actually do harm to your skin. And so these are things that you wouldn't know just by looking at a bottle of oil, but these all have a difference in what you get and the benefits you receive. And then there's the fact that we have chemotypes. A chemotype, that's the phytochemical composition of the essential oil, where one chemical dominates over the norm. So, for instance, in basil, you can have a chemotype methyl chavicol or a chemotype methyl cyanamate or a chemotype linalool or chemotype thymol or a chemotype eugenol. Every single one of those chemotypes is going to be different, and a chemotype will result from these differences in where the plant, not only the plant material, the seed that it was grown from, and the actual plant that was used, okay, but also the composition of the soil it was grown in, the amount of sunlight it got, the amount of rain it got or didn't get, and where it is in altitude. All of these things will affect the oil itself and the outcome of what you get in a bottle. So just those variations from season to season are going to create minor differences, but they can also create a totally different chemotype. And that's important for you to know as well. Okay, what makes Young Living, to me, stand out over and above every other company is their farms and their seed to seal promise. They have standards far beyond the standard of the industry in order to make sure that what you get is as close to what God created as possible. Young Living is the world leader in essential oils with over $1 billion in annual sales. But what I love is that they share the wealth with everyone who chooses to build their own Young Living business and share Young Living with others. And I'm coming up on the end of my time. And Young Living gives back through the Young Living Foundation. 100% of every single donation that we make to the Young Living Foundation goes directly to the projects and partnerships that they help fund. Gary Young said, "I never make a product for profit. I make it for a purpose." And Young Living covers all the administrative costs for the foundation. That's how 100% of what you donate goes to people in need. They have 100 projects and partnerships that the foundation donates to, including disaster relief, earthquake relief, schools, orphanages. They had Rebuild Nepal. They've got Soul Hope, Healing Faith in Uganda. They've got things in Ecuador and Croatia and all Africa, all over the world. So it's a company that not only creates something extraordinary for you, shares the wealth, but gives back and helps build local communities, not tear them down. Okay, that's I'm gonna let that be it. I'm gonna see if you've given me any questions in the chat, and if I can bring it back up. Anybody have any questions out there? Thank you, Dina. Wonderful presentation. Thank you. Wonderful class. Thanks, Vanjie. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've really wanted to do this class for a long time, so I'm glad I got to do it tonight. I really want to thank you for being here with me. Anybody have any questions? Any questions at all? Glad you were here too, Kelly. I saw that somebody had raised their hand while we were doing, I noticed a hand raise. Is there something somebody had a question about that you can type in here and let me know? Okay, I think what I'm going to do, I have this recorded, and I think what I'm going to do is post this up on our website. So what I'll do is send an email out to everybody in our group, and that way, if you let them know, because a lot of people, they get an email from me, they ignore it. But oh, okay, okay. I got a note from the person who thinks they raised their hand. Okay, so yeah, if you let people in your group or people that you're connected to know when I send out this link that they can, that it's a benefit for them to watch this so that they learn about the past of aromatherapy, and hopefully I was compliant. Any of you out there see me do or say anything that was not compliant, let me know. I really worked at making sure I was. Anyway, if you'll just bring it up with them so that, if you feel that they can benefit from it, that they'll know that they can watch it. I'll post this up on our website. And okay, Dina, you have to let me know which slide. Lisa, could I share slides or notes? I don't have any notes. And I'm going to have to find out which one of the slides I had something on that would have been a problem. So I'll have to find that out before I'd have to get rid of that. Hopefully nobody will notice that when I post the video. I can't change it there. But if somebody wants the PowerPoint, I can, I don't have a problem with sending it to you if you're in my group. I just don't want you posting it on social media. You're welcome to use it to teach people in your homes or classes you're doing, but I've got to make sure that it's totally compliant before you can use it there. Yeah, I've been using essential oils since 1995, Lisa. So, and I was a registered aromatherapist for 11 years. I taught at the local university for 4 years, and I had pharmacists and chemists and doctors, medical doctors in my class at the university. Of course, we were never allowed to promote a company, so focusing on these things made that fairly easily. But we used to be able to share a lot more information than I can now. And yeah, I've got a lot of experience and training, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 to 8,000 hours of training in use and of essential oils. So yeah, I got a pretty extensive background. But you don't have to do that. That's the beautiful thing. And the really interesting thing, for those of you who are building a Young Living business, you're welcome, Paula. Thank you. Thank you for being here. If you're building a Young Living business, the really interesting thing is that becoming a registered aromatherapist does nothing to help you. Because you can't tell people about the things that you learn anymore. And the interesting thing is that the Young Living, the people who are coming into Young Living now are growing faster than anybody else because they're not focused on all of this. They're focused on building a business and helping people get oils, and they don't have to know these things. So that's really a great way for me to be able to help you understand knowing all of this is not necessary. And it's actually much easier now to be able to share information that's compliant and not get into the weeds and like I used to send out emails that were 3 to 5 pages long on some great training that I had been to and all that I learned there. And that's just too much. People don't want to do that. They don't want to have to even read through that anymore. It's too much information. So having all this information is not a benefit if you're going to be teaching people about how to use oils. Giving them something simple and easy duplicates. And I'm glad to be able to share this knowledge with you. I wish I could share it in the way that I used to be able to, but I can point you to the resources, and the resources can give you a lot of that information. You just have to spend more time digging it up for yourselves than we used to. We used to feed everybody everything. Anyway, okay, anything else? Yeah, Dana, we do have it so much easier now with apps right on our phones that we can go, oh, what do I need for this? And plug in whatever it is. And it says, oh, this would be a good oil for supporting whatever, you know. And that makes it so much easier than when we started. Anyway, okay, anybody else? Yep, they do, Angie. That's right. They learn better if they do their own research. Oh, Kelly, thank you. Thank you. I have really enjoyed doing this. Okay, everybody. Then I'm going to stop my share and go back to this. And I want to thank every one of you for being here with me and for staying with me. Wow, we're over time. I apologize. I love you all so much. I appreciate you more than you can know. And I'm really glad that I was able to do this evening. And I want to just close out the evening with a prayer for everyone. Heavenly Father, we bow at thy holy feet. We ask you for your guidance, your blessings, and your love. We ask you to fill our life with divine purpose. Help us to treat each person we come in contact with as if we were helping you. Bless us that we give love and understanding and compassion to those in need. And bless those who are hurting, and fill their hearts with the certainty that in some way everything that happens serves your purposes. We don't always understand what it is or why, but everything that happens ultimately serves to bring us closer to you. Bless each and every one here tonight with a very special blessing. Guide and direct their lives, that they know your love in a greater way, and that they are able to give thy love to all. In Jesus' holy name, amen. Okay, everybody. Good night. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Oh, be sure and join us for Don Eagleston's presentation next week. That's going to be awesome. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.